person to me. So that shows us, that's from the mannerism of Imam Ghazali rahimahullah, the way that we should be addressing other people. Right? We don't address people by the worst of the names, a name that they don't like. Just how we learn from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? Whenever Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would greet someone or he would write them a letter, he would give them the best of names, right? Like, when we text one another, like, yo, what you doing? Right? I'm like, yo, what's you trying to link up? This, that. That's what we do, right? But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, when he wrote the letter to Hiraql, right, who was at the time, he was the emperor of Rome, right? He says to the Azim of Rome. He's not saying to Hiraql, right? Because he's showing that this person has a status in the dunya, so I'm going to make sure that I give him the respect that he deserves. Right? To Ila Azim of Rome, min Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To the Azim and to the emperor of Rome, from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? So here, Imam Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala is showing us that, look, when you address someone, you address someone very, very nicely. Ayyuhal walad. Right? This is how he's don't go around saying ayyuhal walad to everybody. Right? Right? Imam Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala is talking to his student here. So, let's continue. Inshallah. The first advice that he gives, right? He says, أيها الولد ما لم تعمل لن تجد الأجر. Right? If you do not work, right? If you do not do actions, you're not going to get any reward. That's the first thing he starts off with, right? If you don't put any effort, right, into getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're not going to get any reward. Just how in life, this is a principle that you can establish anywhere. In life, let's say if you guys go to school, right? You guys have assignments. Right? You have assignments that are due. If you do not do those assignments, what's going to happen? You're not going to pass your class. Right? You're going to fail it. They're going to kick you out of the school. Right? So just like that, in Islam in of itself, if you want to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you need to make effort. You need to do action. Right? If there is no action, there is no reward. Right? We can't just go out about our lives and say, yes, we're Muslim. Yes, I'm Muslim. I believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But we say all these things, right? But I always like to say this when I'm talking to people, that when we say La ilaha illallah, it's not just a statement of the mouth. It's not just a verbal statement. It's a lifestyle that we live by, right? There is no God except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That we are following the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way and the mannerism shown by His Habib sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So if you do not put any action, right? Even we say very often, actions speak louder than words, right? One is, of course, I'm verbally saying, yes, I'm a Muslim. And one is showing that, no, I believe, right, that I'm a Muslim. I'm going to show, right, not to show off to other people, but I'm going to prove to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, that I'm here for His cause. I'm here for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of us sitting here today inside this halaqah, this is a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us to be here. Right? We can be doing anything else. We can be out, doing whatever, hanging out with our friends, eating, whatever we can. But we chose to come here and to listen to the beautiful words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to the beautiful words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So understand that very well. Right? If you do not do any action, if he who does not do any action, you're not going to find any reward. Very, very basic principle of life. So always remember that. Always strive to become the best. Right? Don't ever settle for less. So what happens is, when you do, and that's not, like I said, this is not just pertaining to deen. This is pertaining to everything, right? If you're going to do something, for example, you're doing your studies, or even at home you're doing chores, make sure you do it in the best way possible, because that develops a discipline inside yourself, right? This develops a discipline. Like, you know what? And sometimes people get bothered by perfectionists. Oh, this guy's a perfectionist. Okay, man, right? Like, that's your problem, right? I want to make sure whatever I do, I'm going to be the best at it. Right? So whatever ibadah that we do, right, we make sure that we do it in the best way possible. Right? If we're praying our salah, if we're fasting, if we're whatever the case is, right? If you're gonna do it, make sure you do it in the best way possible. Try to have that perfectionist mindset in your head that, look, I don't care what happens. This is the first thing he says. And then he gives a story. He says, حُكِيَ أَنَّ رَجُلًا مِنْ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ عَبَدَ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى 70 سَنَةً. So he says, it has been transmitted or has been related to us that there was a man from the Banu Israel, right? He worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 70 years straight. For 70 years straight, he worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So he says, فَأَرَادَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى أَن يَتُوبَ عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to test him, right? So He sent him malaika, right? He wanted to test him through the malaika. Because now, this is kind of how it works. When you want to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to put obstacles in your way. That's just how it works. Allah is going to put obstacles in your way to see how you're going to react. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Holy Quran, He says in Surah Al-Ankabut, أَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يَتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يَفْتَنُونَ. Did the people really think, right? Did the people really have this mindset, أَن يَتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا, that they'll be left by saying, we believe in Allah, آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ, and then we're not going to be tested? And then Allah, He answers the question right then and there. This is a rhetorical question, by the way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking. And He says, وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّا الَّذِينَ مِن قَبْلِهِمْ, that assuredly we have tested the people that have come before them. We have definitely tested the people before them. فَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ الْكَاذِبِينَ. And through those tests, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows who's truthful to His cause, and who's lying. Right? And this ayah was revealed regarding Ammar ibn Yasir radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Ammar ibn Yasir radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he was such a sahabi that, he had gone through such a tough test in life, where Abu Jahl, right, he had basically taken his mom and him, right, and he tied up Ammar ibn Yasir, and he's telling his mom that, look, Abu Jahl is now telling Ammar ibn Yasir and his mother, look, if your mother does not denounce Islam, if she does not leave the fold of Islam, I'm going to kill you. That's what Abu Jahl is now telling the mother, Ammar ibn Yasir. All right. Now Ammar ibn Yasir is saying that, look, it's okay. Just say you're not Muslim for right now. You don't believe it in your heart, right? You know that you're Muslim, but you don't believe it in your heart. Just say it. And she's like, there is no way. There is no way I'm going to fold, right? And we can kind of think about this in ourselves, right? Alhamdulillah, we're here. I was on the MSA group chat earlier. Thursday, I really like that, mashallah. It's a good trend to have, alhamdulillah. Right? So we should embrace our Muslim identity. Right? Embrace it. Right? Don't just feel shy. Like if your name is like Farid, oh, call me Fred. Right? Or if your name is Muhammad, oh, just call me Mo. Right? Like don't just embrace that identity. Right? Because we have the most beautiful example in front of us, which is who? The Prophet ﷺ, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says regarding Rasul ﷺ, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ, that assuredly for you, in the Messenger of Allah ﷺ is the most beautiful example. So what more do you need? Why are you hiding? Right? Why are you trying to show people, like I'm not about that, I'm trying to be different, I'm more different. Like why? Why do you want to be different from the person, right, who was the most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right? So this is what we understand. And now getting back to the story of Ammar ibn Yasir. Right? Long story short, Abu Jahl killed his mother. Right? And this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him, look, Islam and Iman is going to be built when you start to go through that struggle. When you go through that struggle in life, and you're still able to walk out of that, but you know what? I believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I have faith in my Creator that whatever He's pulled me through, right? There's always going to be light at the end of the tunnel from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you need to build that mindset, right? For all of us. Just how the Sahaba had. There's many, many stories we can go over, right? When we'll look at let's look at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for example. All right. He says the worst day in his life was what? What was the worst day in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life? Who knows? Huh? Anyone? The worst day in the life of the Prophet ﷺ was the day of Ta'if. And he says it himself. Ta'if was the worst day in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. How come it was the worst? Number one, he goes to the city, right? He goes to the city to spread da'wah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, calling the people towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he goes there, not only did they reject his da'wah, not only did they reject the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ, what else did they do? They ordered the little children in the city to start throwing rocks at the Prophet ﷺ. Start pelting him with stones and rocks and everything. And the hadith talks about what was the state of the Prophet ﷺ at this time. That he was bleeding so much that his feet got stuck inside of his shoe, right? Because all the blood had jammed up inside his foot, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now he makes his way out of the city, right? And Jibreel alayhi salam comes with the angel that is in charge of these two mountains overlooking the Ta'if. Right? And he comes, he says, Salam to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, look, I'm at your service. If you want, I can get rid of these people. I can put these two mountains together and get rid of these people. Right? And no one will ever hear about them ever again. So Rasulullah says that I don't want to do that. Now imagine you were given that opportunity. right? Somebody hits you or somebody did something to you, right? Because this is what societal pressure does, right? If somebody says something, oh, well, you better get it back. You better say something back to him. You better say something back to her. You gonna let him walk all over you, right? Look at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What does he do? He makes dua. First off, in the dua, he blames himself. He blames himself for the weakness that he had portrayed. Even though Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't portray any weakness, he's blaming himself, right? And this kind of goes with one of the diseases of the heart, right? Is that we never look inside ourselves that the mistakes that we have in ourselves. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he being the prophet of Allah, he's a prophet of Allah, he's blaming himself. But in ourselves, we look at everything else around us. Oh, whatever I'm going through is because of him, it's because of her. Or look at this person, what is he doing? Look at her, what is she doing? Right? We always are focused on everybody else around us. Right? And that is not something which is good, because you're never going to look at the flaws that you have inside yourself. You're never going to look at it in that manner. Right? So getting back to the story. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends these malaika to test this man. Right? فَأَرْسَلَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْهِ مَلَكًا يُخْبِرُهُ أَنَّهُ مَعَ تِلْكَ عِبَادَ يَلِيقُ بِهِ. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends this angel to this person, and the angel informs him that whatever ibadah you have done in the past 70 years, right? Understand this very well. Whatever ibadah you have done in these past 70 years, you're not going to enter Jannah with that. Now imagine somebody told you that, right? Whatever schooling that you did, in 4 years of college, sorry man, you can't get your diploma. You can't get your degree. You'd crash out. What are you talking about? I can't get my diploma. Right? What do you mean I can't do this? I'm sitting here for 4 years, 5 years, like waking up early, coming to class, walking all the way from, I used to park at Lot K. I'm never doing that again, right? But basically it's a huge long walk, coming all the way from there to here, right? And I worked my butt off, and I'm finally I did all these years and that's it. Sorry, you can't do it. Look what this person says. This is why Imam Huzaifa mentioned this hadith here. He says, فَلَمَّا بَلَغَهُ قَالَ عَابِدٌ. So now when he told him that, the person who was worshipping Allah for 7 years, what did he say? He says, نَحْنُ خَلَقْنَا لِعِبَادَةٍ. We were created for worship. This is what we got to do. No matter what happens. Even if I don't enter Jannah, right? Even if all the ibadah that you did, right? Somehow you're not able to enter Jannah. Look, it's my job to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the best way. Right? That's my job. As the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, right? You want to get to a point where the hadith Jibreel ﷺ, أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ, that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you see Allah right in front of you. فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. But if you cannot do so, so when you see Allah in front of you, فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ, know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching you. Right? So it doesn't matter. Our main goal, sometimes when you ask people, right, what's your purpose in life? And I'm going to ask you guys this question. Right? They're like, oh, you know what? I want to get to Jannah. Right? So now I'm going to ask you guys this question. What is your purpose in life? You can have a couple of answers, inshallah, no problem. What is your purpose in life? Anybody can answer, no worries, open floor. Ibadah. Ibadah is good? Ibadah is a part of it? What else?
Be a good person.
Be a good person, right? One more answer, inshallah. One more.
Do good deeds.
Do good deeds, mashallah. See, now these are very good answers, but they're all related to the main answer, which is what? Ma'rifah. To know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, right? I don't know how am I supposed to worship Allah if I don't know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is? So I need to know who my creator is. Right? I need to understand who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? I need to know what things He has done for me. Right? What attributes does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have? What sifat does He have? Right? I need to know everything about Allah. Right? Because once you get to know someone, like for example, once you get to know, even when somebody gets married, once you get to know your spouse, then you truly fall in love with that person. So when you truly get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you're going to feel that sweetness of ibadah that we're all looking for. Right? So this person, he's saying, look, I haven't been created to enter Jannah. Right? We know that we're not going to enter Jannah except through the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We've been told we've been told about this from the hadith of Prophet ﷺ. No matter how many good deeds you do, right? You can go above and beyond. You can pray in the Kaaba. You can do whatever you want, right? You will not enter Jannah unless it's through the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That's how you're going to enter Jannah. Right? And the first place that you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in yourself. You find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in there. Right? Remove all that rust in the heart that you have. Really just sit down and think. Right? In the next hadith we're going to go over it. Let me finish the story, we'll go over that inshallah. So he says that فَيَنْبَغِي لَنَا أَن نَعْبُدَهُ. Right? So it's only befitting for us to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created ins and jinn except for my worship. And the Mufassir is لِيَعْرِفُونَ. So we can recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? فَلَمَّا رَجَعَ الْمَلَكُ. So now when the angel goes back to Allah, قال إلهي, oh my Lord, أنت أعلم بما قال. You know best what he said. Right? You know what this man said. فقال الله تعالى إذا هو لم يعرض عن عبادتنا فنحن مع الكرم لا نعرض عنه. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said now, right? We know that he did not turn away from our ibadah. Even though we told him that, look, you're not entering Jannah. Right? You're not entering Jannah. So, did that stop him? Like, no, I still have to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't care. Right? Because the thing is for us, right? When we do ibadah in this life, right? Sometimes we steer away from our religion. It's because the akhirah for us is not something tangible. We can't see the akhirah. Right? For us as human beings, we want to see the reward right away. Well, I have to see the reward. Right? I want to see it right away. Why isn't my reward coming to me? Somebody gave me a call about a couple months ago. And then they were like, like, I lost my job, right? I lost everything, right? I got laid off, whatever. And, I feel like the help of Allah is not coming, right? Like, Allah is not helping me out. And I asked him a very simple question. I was like, look, have you been praying your salah? He said, no. So I was like, wow, right? That's your answer right there. And this story gets crazier. I'm going to tell you what happens next. So I was like, look, man, first of all, pray your fard salah. Your fard salah and your ibadah that you have are 5 days. That's the bare minimum, by the way. We think we pray 5 times salah. We're like, oh, yes, we are the biggest wali of Allah. We pray our 5 daily prayers. That's the bare minimum, man. That's the bare minimum. So now I told this guy, I was like, look, number one, get your prayers right. Pray your 5. And then I was like, look, pray tahajjud. Get up in the night and cry to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Cry to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the people that are going to be on the shade of the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That he worship is going to be that person who worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Khaliyan, yani by himself. Right? فَفَاضَتْ عَيْنَاهُ. And his eyes start to begin to weep with tears. So I told him, I was like, go pray the tahajjud. He gives me a call 2 days later. Right? Mind you, this guy has no money, no job, no nothing. And he's like, man, like, I prayed tahajjud for 2 days, and I kept getting this random email from one of these banks. And I found out that I had $40,000 sitting in another account of mine. And I had no idea. This guy couldn't pay rent. He couldn't pay his car note, like his electricity bill, his phone bill, right? Like, it's out of nowhere. SubhanAllah. Praying tahajjud for 2 days only. Right? Not like 10 days, 20 days, 30 days. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows that Allah doesn't need a means to make something happen. For us, we think that, everything needs a means, this, that, and the third. Right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us this through the battle of Badr. Right? The battle of Badr was such a battle that if you look at the odds, right? You have 313 Muslims compared to 1,000 kuffar. In our minds, like, dude, how are we going to win? Right? But when you have the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is nothing that can stop you. No matter the whole ummah were to get together and try to prevent you from doing something, there is no way they can stop you unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants it to happen. So in this situation, right, he's like, man, like, this is crazy. I prayed tahajjud for 2 days, and this is what happened. I'm like, bro, this is just like this. Pray every single day, and you're going to see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens the doors for you. Right? This is how it is. Right? Don't wait for something tangible. Right? Don't be like, I need to see my reward, and then after that I'm going to worship. No, the reward is going to be there. You're stacking up your akhirah. Right? Whatever good deeds you're doing in this life, you're literally stacking up your akhirah. You're making millions in the akhirah. Right? Don't just be like, I feel like, I just need to have some. Inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you in this life and the hereafter. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Talaq, it says, وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Whosoever fears Allah who has God consciousness, Allah is going to make some way out for you. وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. And Allah will provide for this person from such a place where he had no idea. from out of nowhere, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide for you. I don't know how I got to here, but I'm going to get back on track, inshallah. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here, he's literally demonstrating. He's like, look, this person gave the most beautiful answer he could give, right? That we are just made for ibadah. That's our purpose. Whether Jannah or not, we have to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah, we get to Jannah through our ibadah, right? And then now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ishhadu ya malaikati anni qad ghafartu lakum. Right? That you bear witness, oh my malaika, indeed I have forgiven that person. I have forgiven that individual who had this beautiful answer. Now look, I have been created for ibadah. All of us sitting here today, right? All of us sitting here today, we have one goal. To know your creator. And by knowing your creator, understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then your ibadah will become so much better. Right? We look how, and the way we describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it kind of shows up, it reflects our relationship with Allah, right? Kind of like, for example, how Musa alayhi salam, when he went to Fir'aun, and then Fir'aun was mocking him. He's like, you talk about this Rabbul Alameen. قال فرعون وما رب العالمين. Fir'aun says, what is this Rabbul Alameen you keep going on about? Right? He says, قال رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Lord, right, of the skies and the earth, and that which is in between. Right? In kuntum muqinin. If you would just have this faith in this yaqeen. And then he says, قال لمن حوله ولا تستمعون. Now Fir'aun continues to mock him. Right? He says to the people around him, ألا تستمعون. Do you hear this guy? Right? Imagine, like, put yourself in a situation, like you're talking about something, everyone, this guy's a clown, get out of here, right? You just get so mad, like, I'm trying to say something, right? Listen to me, right? But he continues, قَالَ رَبُّكُمْ وَرَبُّ آبَائِكُمُ الْأَوَّلِينَ, that he is not only your Lord, but he is the Lord of your forefathers as well, right? And then he says after that, قَالَ رَبُّ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا. He is the Lord of the east and the west, and that which is between. إِن كُنتُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ, if you were just to have this conviction. So describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that fashion, right? Don't be such where you can stop talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after a minute or so. Keep on going. Allah is this, Allah is that, Allah has done this for me, Allah has done that for me. When you start to do that, right, you'll see any single thing that you do in life can become a form of ibadah. Even in your school, when you come here, right, you wake up in the morning, right, you come to school, right, if you have the right niyyah behind it, it can become a form of ibadah. Even using the bathroom, subhanAllah, right? Even using the bathroom can become a form of ibadah for you, if you just have the right niyyah, right? I'm going to use the bathroom the way that Rasulullah ﷺ taught me how to use the bathroom, right? That becomes a form of ibadah for you, right? These are things that, like, think about. And really, like, before you do anything, always just think, like, how can I reap reward out of this? How can I gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this action of mine? And when we start to think like that, our ibadah is going to become a whole other level, right? So let's continue, inshallah. So he says here that Imam Ghazali continues now. He says, قال Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, right? حاسبوا أنفسكم قبل أن تحاسبوا. What is it? حاسب. Always remember this statement. Try to memorize it. حاسبوا أنفسكم قبل أن تحاسبوا. Take yourself into account. Take yourself into account before Allah subhanahu wa, before you are taken into account. Really sit down and understand the kind of person you are. Imam Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that look at your inner self like you do into a mirror. When we look inside a mirror, right? If you look from very far, we're like, man, I'm looking good today, right? Looking very nice. For the boys, you got a fresh haircut, looking very good, right? For the sisters, I have a nice abaya, whatever the case is, right? As you get closer to the mirror, right? You start to notice blemishes. Like, man, what's on my face? Is that a pimple? Right? Is that a blackhead? Is this, is that? We start to notice things as we get closer to the mirror. So that's what Imam Ghazali is saying here. He said, look at yourself in that fashion, right? Look at your inner self, in your nafs, and how you have let your nafs completely take control over yourself. Like, you have so many diseases of the heart, right? Like, when you look at other people with eyes of disdain, you're like, you know what? Like, what is this person doing? I'm better than this person. Now, Shaitan is putting this in your head. Now, look, man, right? You're the guy. you're him, you're her, whatever, however you say it, right? Like in this, Shaitan has put this in your mind, your nafs has put this in your mind that you're that person, right? And that develops a sense of pride, right? One of the biggest diseases of the heart is ostentation and pride and showing off to people, right? Understand that showing off to people and having this pride, this is exactly what got Shaitan kicked out of Jannah, right? What did he say, right? When he saw Adam alayhi salam, he was like, man, he's like, خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. You created me from fire. وخلقته من طين. Right? He said what? Before that, what did he say? قال أنا خير منه. I'm better than him. And even outwardly, we won't say it, right? But in our hearts, we'll feel that we're better than some other people, right? Just because we look at them with the eye of disdain. We're like, you know what, man? This person, like his outward actions, he just shows that he's a bad person. Is it our job to point fingers at people? Absolutely not. It's a very famous saying that a person, he'll look at he'll notice the dust particle in his brother's eye, but he'll forget the tree stump in his own eye. Right? We have so many faults in ourselves, yet we choose to ignore those faults and look at the problems that every single person has. Right? And I've seen this, right? Not like, I've seen this happen so many times, right? When people get so upset at somebody else for the smallest thing. Somebody leaves their shoes on the floor at the masjid. Oh, what's wrong with this guy? Who does he think he is? Somebody's accidentally parked a little bit. We don't give people the benefit of the doubt. You know what, man? He's probably something's going on, right? We never make those excuses for somebody. Right away, we want to point a finger at them. Like, this person has this issue. He has that issue. She has this issue. She has that issue. And like I said, it literally blinds all the mistakes you have inside yourself. Just look closely into the mirror inside yourself. You see, like, how many mistakes, how many faults do I have? One time, there's a very big, beautiful story by Imam Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala. It's about himself personally. Imam Ghazali rahimahullah, one time he was teaching. And mind you, he was like the mufti of the time. Imam Ghazali rahimahullah. Like he was the man. And while he was teaching, he had some question about his niyya. Some question, right? It wasn't even a big thing. You know what he does? He gets up and he leaves for 10 years. I'm not saying you gotta do that. Right? Don't just be like, you know what, that's it. Alright, I'm gonna go find myself. I'm not saying do that. Right? But Imam Ghazali gets up, he leaves for 10 years. And what does Imam Ghazali do in these 10 years? He goes and he puts himself in situations where he is a lowly person. Right? According to society, right? He goes and he becomes a janitor of the masjid in Damascus. And one time a person comes with a question, and he goes to the ulama, and this ulama and the scholars can't figure out the answer to this question. They're like, man, what is the answer? So as he's walking out, Imam Ghazali asks him, what were you guys like talking about? So he's like, I came to the ulama with this question, but they were unable to answer it. And Imam Ghazali gives him the answer. And he's like, what do you think you are, man? Like, you're a janitor, right? Like, get out of here. Mind you, this is Imam Ghazali back, right? So he's like, you're just a janitor, what do you know? And so he goes back to the ulama, he's like, look, this guy said, this is the answer, I don't know what he was talking about. And they're like, that was the right answer. Like, that was the answer we were looking for. And then when he went to go find Imam Ghazali had already left. But he's like, I don't want to put myself in a position to where I can, people can notice me as some big figure. So here, Imam Ghazali is trying to teach us, look, man, right? Getting back to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, really analyze your inner self. Know what your nafs is, right? Your nafs, don't think you're something, right? Don't ever think you're something. One time, somebody came to Hassan al-Basri, rahimahullah, kind of boasting about, what kind of person he is. Like, you know who I am? Say, yeah, Hassan al-Basri, rahimahullah, he shut him up right there. He's like, I know who you are. You're the product of one private part going to the private part. Assalamu alaikum. That's it. And he was like, man. Like, he left him stunned. He's like, man, what am I supposed to say that? Because it's true. You are created from dirt, from nothing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds you of that throughout the Holy Quran. You think you're some hotshot, right? We think we're something in life. We're not. We're literally created from dirt. And we're going to return into dirt just like that. So that's what Rasulullah is saying. Hasibu anfusakum. Right? Take yourself into account. Before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes you into account. Right? And always make, for us, my teacher would always tell me, make a checklist throughout the day. Right? How can I better myself on a daily basis? It doesn't have to be don't try to become a saint overnight. It's not going to happen. Right? It's not gonna, everything takes its time. Everything takes its time. It's not like you just wake up one day and like that's it. Like you become like the level of some tabi or some sahabi. No. You have to build yourself to that. Everything. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala understands that. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Hadith Qudsi, right? لَمَنْ تَقَرَّبَ إِلَيَّ شِبْرًا تَقَرَّبْتُ إِلَيْهِ ذِرَاعًا. Whosoever comes to me a handspan, Allah will stretch his arm up from. In a figurative sense, that Allah is waiting for you to take that first step back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Once you take that first step, once you take that first step back to Allah, Allah will make the rest of the way easy for you. Right? Again, the advice that Rasulullah gave to Ibn Abbas, right? Very famous hadith, right? He says, Ibn Abbas, he says, كنت خلف النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يوما. One day I was sitting behind the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم. So he said, فقال يا غلام. He says, oh غلام, this is his cousin. احفظ الله يحفظك. Protect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will protect you. So I'm going to ask another question here. That how do you protect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Who knows? How do you protect Allah? Is al-Hafidh, right? So how do we protect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Anyone?
All His commands.
Yes, very good, mashallah. Right? Uphold the commands of Allah. Right? Stay away from those things which Allah has negated you from doing. Right? That's the whole definition of taqwa in himself, right? That imtithal al-awamir wa ijtinab al-ma'as. Carry out the commands of Allah. And stay away from those which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told you to stay away from. And what is going to be the result of that? Right? Yahfadka. Allah will protect you. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be there by your side at all times. Allah is not going to abandon you. You know the beautiful story. You guys ever thought about like, if you've ever read Surah Duha, and you think about Surah Duha and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kind of, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned each verse, there's such a beautiful like, it's such a beautiful, the way that's put is so beautiful. You look at how Allah, because Rasulullah was going through such a difficult time in his life, to where he received wahi, right? And then after a long time, wahi did not come. So he was thinking that maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is upset with him. Right? Allah is angry with him or some way. Right? He was so worried about that. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals Surah Duha. And he opens up with the start, Wal Duha. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath by the daybreak. Right? Wal Duha. And then the next, وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath by the night. So the question comes in, why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taking an oath by the daytime and then by the night? Who can answer this question for? Why is Allah taking an oath by the daytime and then by the nighttime? Who here? Huh?
Worship.
I mean, yeah, that's part of it, worship, yeah. But why is Allah saying, making an oath by the daytime and the nighttime?
Show the importance of what he's about to say after. Like if it's such a big deal, he didn't swear on such a giant thing as daybreak night.
Yes, that's part of it as well. That's actually a very good answer. The answer here is though, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala show you the look. The reason why Allah mentioned duha first and then layl after is because the duha time, the daytime, right? How long is duha time? You know, you guys have played some duha before. It's like from like what, 8 to like 12, maybe, so like that, 4 hours. And how long is the night? A full 8, 9 hours, probably longer than that, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to show us here that look, the good and prosperous times in your life, they're not going to last that long. They can last a couple of hours, maybe. Probably like a couple of times in life you'll be happy. But then the time that you're going through something difficult is going to be longer. You have duha, which is such a short amount of time, right? You're going to be happy, right? Because this dunya is not here to make you happy. This dunya, we think that this dunya is going to make us happy and chasing after it is going to be, right? We're going to be the best people. This dunya is not going to make you happy, right? It's actually going to make you, the more you chase after it, the more it's going to make you depressed. You've seen these people all over, you know, celebrities and so on and so forth. You've seen, like, you think these people are happy without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not. They're not happy whatsoever. You see it all the time, celebrities committing suicide. This person, he died because this, overdose, this, that. But the question in our minds is like, why are they doing this? In our eyes, these people have the whole world, right? They have money, they have cars, they have houses, they have $10,000, $15,000 beds, but why can't they sleep at night? It's because they have no connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And Allah is reminding us in the surah that look, the happiness in your life is not going to be that long, right? Compared to the night. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, in telling us as well, مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. Allah has not abandoned you. وَمَا قَلَى. Allah has not just, He's not angry with you. Right? So, we have to understand is that, look, whenever we're going through something, right, understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to, لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. Don't lose hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us in the surah, that look, Allah is not going to abandon you. Rather, what happens is, we abandon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when something hits the fan, then we're like, oh man, what do I do now? Right? What do I do now? Allah will never abandon His servants. Up until the servant abandons Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Understand that. Live by that. Don't ever abandon Allah. Because the moment you do so, you're going to see this. Everything is going to start to go south. Right? Everything. Allah is not going to, you know what, fine. You want to live your life, go ahead. So that's what Allah, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, وَلَلْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى. Right? So if you would translate this ayah literally, it means that the akhirah for you is better than the dunya. That's how you would translate it. But the Mufassirin kind of put it into more perspective. Yani the next stage of your life is going to be better than the previous stage. The next, وَلَلْآخِرَةُ, يعني the next stage is going to be better than the previous stage. Look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ. You see where he started, right? All being boycotted by the people of Mecca, going through all these different wars, and at the end, what happened? Fath Makkah happened, right? When they opened Makkah, they were able to perform Hajj. They were able to do all these things, right? So this is how life is. That you're going to be going through trials and tribulations, and you're going to be tested, right? And what's it called? These all have an effect on our heart, right? But if you stay with Allah and don't abandon with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll be good inshallah. This is what the definition of حَاسِبُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Really getting back to the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just analyze yourself. No one else knows you better than your own self. No one else. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of course knows, right? As we know. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows us better than our own self. But the second person, or the second individual that knows us, like no one knows us better than ourselves. We know what's inside us. We know how we feel towards people. We know how what kind of emotions we have. We know everything about ourselves, right? So if you really want to change, if you really want to have an impact on yourselves, right, you need to start some point. At some way, the question comes in like, where's the starting point? Like, where do I start? Turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save you from all the different trials and tribulations of the heart. There's a very famous dua, right? Where we say, Ya muqallib al-qulub, right? Oh, one who changes the hearts. Thabbit qalbi ala dinik. Establish my heart upon your deen. Right? This is a dua that we make. Ya Allah, establish my heart. Right? The heart that's so rusty and there's so many sins and everything. Establish the heart even though I'm not worthy of it. I'm not worthy of that. Ya Allah, please establish my heart upon the religion. Right? Once you make this dua constantly, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees some effort from your side, again, getting back to his original point, that as long as you don't do any effort, there's not going to be any reward. You have to make that effort, right? The sabr, right? The sabr is the three types, right? You have sabr ala ta'a, sabr ala ma'asi, and sabr ala musibah, right? The first one, sabr ala ta'a, making patience upon ta'a, yani just to get up in the morning, to pray fajr, right? Or whatever, drive to school, to make your dhikr, it's very difficult for us because it's not part of our routine, right? It's not part of our routine. So you need to make it a part of your routine, and that requires sabr. That requires a sort of patience. But once you go through that, inshallah, you're going to see subhanAllah. Right? I love to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? You're going to love to hear about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're going to be blinded by the love of Allah. As Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions, حُبُّكَ شَيْءً يُعْمِي وَيُسِمْ. Your love for something blinds you and deafens you. Right? That every single action that you do, right, you make sure that you do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you won't even want to go towards bad actions. The next part of the hadith he mentions, وَزِنُوا أَعْمَالِكُمْ قَبْلَ أَن تُزَنُوا. Right? And weigh your a'mal, weigh your actions before your actions are weighed on the day of Qiyamah. Now, you're the one person that can choose what you want to do. Right? Do you want to wait until Yawm al-Qiyamah? Do we want to wait until Yawm al-Qiyamah till our a'mal are weighed? Or do we want to do it ourselves? You know what did I do today to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What did I do today to please Allah? If I have done something to please Allah, I make shukr to Allah. Ya Allah, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and ask Allah for tawfiq to do it even more. But if I've done something, on the flip side, if I've done something wrong, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, to forgive me. Make istighfar, make it a part of your daily life. In the morning we have our daily adhkar. One of the biggest portions that is making istighfar. Right? And always remember this dua of Sayyid al-Istighfar. Right? It's a very long dua, but you can memorize. Because Allahumma anta rabbi la ilaha illa ant خلقتني وأنا عبدك وأنا على عهدك ووعدك ما استطعت أعوذ بك من شر ما صنعت أبوء لك بنعمتك علي وأبوء بذنبي فاغفر لي فإنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت. Right? No one's going to remember. But I'm saying that this is Sayyid al-Istighfar. Right? This is the best kind of istighfar you can do. Because you are now humbling yourself in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And showing to Allah, Ya Allah, I'm no one. I'm absolutely no one compared to you, Ya Allah. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, Astaghfiru rabbakum thumma tubu ilayh. Right? That make istighfar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So when we make istighfar, when we say astaghfirullah, right? Because the only thing that can wipe out our major actions, the major mistakes that we do is tawbah. Right? And we know the condition of our tawbah, right? We say, Ya Allah, I'm sorry. And then the next minute we'll go back and or the next day we'll go back and do the same thing. That's not tawbah. That's not feeling bad for what you've done. Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala highlights 3 conditions for your tawbah to be accepted. The first one is أن يقلع عن المعصية. That you stop the sin right away. You don't continue on with it. If you truly feel bad for something, you're not going to continue on with it. You're going to stop it. Right? And it's a very difficult task. Again, I'm sitting here saying all these things, but it's a lot easier said than done. If someone has a habit of something, right? Even if you can't stop it right away, take steps towards stopping. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Right? If you have a bad habit, try to do it less. Right? If you have whatever the case may be, whatever haram someone does, whatever the case is, right? Try to slowly stop it. Right? Don't just, obviously no one's going to be able to go cold turkey right away. Right? Slowly, slowly build up to that. And when Allah sees that effort from you, Allah is going to start opening those doors for you. And Allah, you will see, it'll become easier. As life goes along, it'll become a lot easier for you to do so. So the first step is that you stop the sin right away. Right? The second one, أن يندم على فعلها, that you feel bad and you feel remorse for the sin that you've committed. Right? I feel so bad knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was watching me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us plenty of times in the Quran, وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. Allah is reminding us how close He is to us, right? And He knows that every single action that we do, right? يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورُ. Allah knows everything. Yeah, I still went ahead, knowing that Allah is watching me, and I decided to commit this sin, right? We should feel embarrassed. Wallahi, we should feel embarrassed, right? That's why Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, sometimes when we feel like, we can commit sins like in private, right? We commit sins in private and no one else is going to know, right? Except us. Allah knows. Allah is watching. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he mentions a very beautiful poem. He says, شكوت إلى وكيل الناس لسنا وكيل. Sorry. إذا ما قال لربي أما استحييت تعصيني. When my Lord will say to me, when I pass away, because all of us are going to pass, like that's a reality we all have to face. كل نفس ذائقة الموت. Every single person is going to taste death. Whether you're old, whether you're young, whatever. We know so many brothers in the community that pass away at such a young age. Right? That could be you. Right? That can be any of us. Tomorrow, I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to walk away from this table. Right? And then, so Imam Ahmad is saying that Allah will say to this person, أَمَا اسْتَحْيَيْتَ تَعْصِينِي. Did you not feel shy from disobeying me? Right? وَتُخْفِي الذَّنْبَ عَنْ خَلْقِي وَبِالْعِصْيَانِ تَأْتِينِي. That you hid the sin from my creation. A good job. You hid the sin from everybody else. وَبِالْعِصْيَانِ تَأْتِيني. But you brought the sin to me. You thought nobody else was watching you? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was watching. Right? فَكَيْفَ أُجِيبُ يَا وَيْحِي. How am I going to answer now? Like now I'm dead. There's no going back. Right? People are always going to say, Ya Allah, please send me back. Right? It's too late now. Right? Your a'mal are done. They're sealed. They're gone. Right? Now he said, فَكَيْفَ أُجِيبُ يَا وَيْحِ. How am I going to answer all my destruction? وَمَنْ ذَا سَوْفَ يَحْمِينِ. Who's going to protect me now? And then he mentioned something that we all can resonate to. Right? أُسَلِّ النَّفْسَ بِالْآمَالِ مِنْ حِينِ إِلَى حِينِ. That I would give myself a hope from time to time. Right? I would let my nafs go ahead. Right? You know what? It's okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive me. Allah is Ghafur Rahim. How many times have you guys heard that? Oh, Allah is Ghafur Rahim, man. Like, I can just do this action. Allah will forgive me. Right? That's exactly what he's saying. أُسَلِّ النَّفْسَ بِالْآمَالِ مِنْ حِينِ إِلَى حِينِ. That I have given myself this hope from time to time. Allah will forgive me. Don't worry. I've listened to the verses of Allah. Allah is Ghafur Rahim. Allah is At-Tawwab. Allah will forgive me no matter what I do. Right? But that is not how it works. وَأَنْسَى مَا وَرَاءَ الْمَوْتِ. This happens to all of us. I forgot what was to come after death. يعني when I die, I forgot that I have to face Allah. مَاذَا بَعْدَ تَكْفِينِ. Right? After they have buried me, put me in my coffin, after they have buried me, what happens? كَأَنِّي قَدْ ضَمِنْتُ الْعَيْشِ. Sorry. It's as if I thought I was going to live forever. Right? All of us, we live in this like this false reality. I'm going to live forever. كأني قد ضمنت العيش. ليس الموت يأتي. Right? It's as if I want to live forever and death is not going to come to me at all. But the reality is that you're going to die. Right? And this is why I'm mentioning this here, because the second thing that you do is that when you do a sin and you commit some wrong, immediately you feel that you have this nadam. At-tawbah hiya nadam. Tawbah is that remorse that a person feels when you commit a sin. And the third and final thing is, right? أن يعزم ألا يعود إليها أبدا. And he makes a firm intention that he's not going to go back to the sin ever again. That is how your tawbah is going to be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Without these three conditions, right? You can't just have one and not have the other two. These three conditions are very key on your tawbah being accepted. And what is the sign of your tawbah being accepted? Is that you're not really inclined to do that action anymore. Right? Your nafs feels less inclined to do it. That's the sign that now your tawbah is being accepted. Alright? So, getting back to the initial point, right, about Imam Huzaifa Ta'ala, what he's talking about here, right? There's a lot of stuff we can go over, but we don't have that much time. Right? We still have more to go in the text. Right? So the next part he says, وقال علي رضي الله عنه ومن ظن أنه بدون جهد يصل فهو مذموم. Whosoever thinks that they can, that without any effort, he can reach a good status, or he can do something in life, right? That he's dreaming. But the man, he's just dreaming. You think you can get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by not making any effort? Right? The relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires effort. Just how in life, if you have a relationship, it requires an effort. So with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it requires an effort as well. You need to prove to Allah, you need to pray salah, you need to fast, you need to make dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be like, you know what, Ya Allah, I'm going to prove to you that, Ya Allah, I am your servant. I am your abd. Right? You need to prove that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, going back to what I said earlier, you can't just have this lip service, yeah, I believe in Allah, and that's it. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells, أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَنَّمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ عَبَثًا وَأَنَّكُمْ إِلَيْنَا لَا تُرْجَعُونَ. Do you really think that you've been created to just play? Right? وَأَنَّكُمْ إِلَيْنَا لَا تُرْجَعُونَ. That you're not going to return to us? Right? You're going to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you keep living your life in this way, right? Then, oh yeah, I don't have to put any effort towards Allah. Right? As the hadith mentioned, right? مَنْ قَالَ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ دَخَلَ الْجَنَّةِ. Whosoever says La ilaha illallah, right? They enter Jannah. Oh, assalamu alaikum. That's it. That's not the end of it. When this hadith was actually said to the Sahaba, one Sahabi went and ran and went to tell the rest of the people, oh, you say La ilaha illallah, you're good. That's it. But Umar radiallahu anhu said, that's not the case. He says, don't go around and tell these people because that's what they're going to think. Right? That La ilaha illallah, right, requires an effort to live by. You don't just say and that's it. Right? So this is a question that we have to ask ourselves. That, this is part of the whole muhasabah and evaluation. Evaluating yourself. That, do I really live by Islam? Do I have Islamic values? Right? Do I have the proper morals to say that I'm a Muslim? Right? Well, we're lucky to even say that we're Muslim. Right? And we'll see for those people, if you ever met someone who's reverted to Islam, you see they have so much love for the religion. They have so much love for it. It's because they have found what they've been looking for their whole life. But for people like me, right, who've been born Muslim, right, we're like, you know what? Oh, we take it for granted. Like, yeah, we're born Muslim. Yeah, we're just this Muslim by name. Like, am I really truly a Muslim? Or am I just saying it? I'm just saying this, oh, it's just a trend. Oh, I'm Muslim. Right? Yeah, I believe in Allah and I believe in Prophet ﷺ, but I want to follow the way of the Kuffar. I want to follow the way of everybody else except the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So now he continues here. And then after that, he mentions that that person who believes that, there is some effort required. That, you know what, I have to do effort. Right? Then he's going to be successful. Right? You make an effort toward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? You make that effort to Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open so many doors. And then the next part he says, وَقَالَ الْحَسَنَ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى. Right? This is Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah. He says, طَلَبُ الْجَنَّةِ بِلَا عَمَلٍ ذَنْبٌ مِنَ الذُّنُوبِ. He says, to seek out Jannah without having any action. Right? It's a ذَنْبٌ مِنَ الذُّنُوبِ. يعني it's a sin amongst the different sins. You want to seek out Jannah? Yes. But what do you have to offer? Right? Whenever you go apply for a job, whatever the case is, they're going to see your qualifications. Right? I want to see what you're bringing to the table. Right? Now you want to come on the day of Qiyamah, expecting Jannah, but you have nothing to offer. Right? It doesn't work like that. Just how in life, right? When you go, like I said before, you want to apply for a job, you want to do anything in life, everyone's going to see what qualifications you have. Do you fit this criteria that you're able to do this job? You want to get into Jannah, right? What criteria do you fit? Right? What makes you fit the criteria to enter Jannah? And the biggest enemy that kind of keeps us away from that is our nafs. Right? We don't really understand the nafs too much, right? The carnal desires. Understand that you have shaitan, you have your nafs, and then obviously, and then you have your ruh. And every single person is born into shaitan. Every single person. Aisha radiallahu anha even asked Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, even you? Yes, even me, but my shaitan has submitted. But that's not the case for all of us. There is a constant attack against you by your shaitan, by your nafs. Constantly. Over and over and over again. Right? Now look, I have to make sure that this person falls under that person, that I made a covenant, the shaitan, he made a covenant to Allah, right? What did he say? What did he say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. I'm going to misguide these people altogether. But he made istithna. Even shaitan knows. إِلَّا عِبَادَكَ مِنْهُمُ الْمُخْلَصِينَ. But I can't misguide those people who are true to the cause of Allah. That's how he made إِلَّا عِبَادَكَ مِنْهُمُ الْمُخْلَصِينَ. Except those servants of yours who are true to you, Allah. Even shaitan knows that if you are true to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even shaitan cannot shake. Shaitan cannot hinder your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knows that himself. So we need to put a foot on our nafs because that is a criteria. Allah mentions the end of Surah Nazi'at, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ. And as for that person who fears the maqam of his Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنْ هَوَى. And he negates the desires of his nafs, what's his reward? فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى. Jannah is going to be his final abode. So that's the criteria. Right? That's what he's saying here. And he mentions another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, to kind of end off this chapter. Right? He says that الْكَيِّسُ مَنْ دَانَ نَفْسَهُ وَعَمِلَ لِمَا بَعْدَ الْمَوْتِ. A smart person, right? Now Rasulullah is telling what a smart person is. You can be smart in school, you can be smart in your career, but a smart person, according to the Prophet ﷺ and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is مَنْ دَانَ نَفْسَهُ. He puts a foot on his desires. He puts a foot on his nafs. وَعَمِلَ لِمَا بَعْدَ الْمَوْتِ. And he prepares for what is to come after death. Right? Let me ask you this question. What kind of death do you want? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes two kind of deaths in the Quran. Number one, He describes death of a person who is a disbeliever and the one who is a zalim, someone who is an oppressor. Right? Allah says, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلًا عَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمِينَ. Right? And we're going to get into further detail about this. Do not think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unaware of what the zalimun, the people who are oppressing you. إِنَّمَا يُؤَخِّرُهُمْ لِيَوْمٍ تَشْخَصُ فِيهِ الْأَبْصَارِ Allah is just delaying them to such a day where they're going to wake up in horror. Right? And just trying to give you an idea of what happens to a person if they live a very bad life. What's their death going to be like? Rasulullah ﷺ talks about this. That person who lived a very bad life, the way that his ruh is going to be extracted, it's as if you take wool, right? You take the wool of a sheep and you throw it on a very thorny branch and you try to pull it off. Imagine that. That's how your ruh is going to be pulled out. That your ruh, your body is going to be in so much pain because your ruh is going to be tugging at your muscle tissue. It knows where it's going. It knows its final destination. Right? Now on the flip side, you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing how what's it called? The death of a mu'min is going to be. And this is very beautiful, subhanAllah. Right? He mentions that إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهِ. Indeed, those people who say, our Lord is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا. This is the precondition, right? You can say your Lord is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا. But to have your steadfastness on that is a completely different thing. You can say my Lord is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you live a life in a life of disobedience. ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا. But to have that quality of istiqamah and steadfastness is the more important thing to have. What's going to happen to this person? تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ. The malaika will not descend upon this person. أَلَّا تَخَافُوا. Are you chilling? Don't worry. لَا تَخَافُوا. Don't fear. You're good. Right? وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا. Don't have any fear. Don't grieve. Don't be sad. Rather, what happened? وَأَبْشِرُوا. Be happy, right? Rejoice with that Jannah التي كنتم توعدون. That Jannah which you were promised. Because dude, you passed all the tests. You did everything you were supposed to do in this life. You followed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You followed the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now, we're going to take care of it. Right? وَأَبْشِرُوا بِالْجَنَّةِ الَّتِي كُنتُمْ تُوعَدُونَ نَحْنُ أَوْلِيَاؤُكُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ. We're gonna be your friends now. They're not gonna be some some ugly figure. These are gonna be the most beautiful creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surrounding you. نَحْنُ أَوْلِيَاؤُكُمْ. We're your friends. فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. In the life of dunya, وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ. And in the akhirah. What is Allah? Not only that, it gets better. Right? We think, oh, that's it. No, it gets even better. وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَا تَشْتَهِي أَنفُسُكُمْ. And for you is whatever your heart wants. مَا تَشْتَهِي أَنفُسُكُمْ. Whatever your heart, like our nafs has this quality or element of shahwa, right? That's the word, تَشْتَهِي, comes from shahwa. Whatever you want. وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَا تَدَعُونَ. So that's how the malaika are going to greet you if you live a good life. Now, I'm going to end off here. So now we understand who a smart person is, right? Now Rasulullah ﷺ mentions وَالْعَاجِزِ. Someone who's a foolish person, right? Who's a dumb person. مَنْ أَتْبَعَ نَفْسَهُ هَوَاهُ. He lets his nafs go haywire. Go ahead, do what you want. وَتَمَنَّى عَلَى اللَّهِ. And you have this hope from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That, Allah will forgive me. Kind of what we talked about earlier. Allah will forgive me, no problem. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ghafur Rahim. You live your life by that, and on the day of Qiyamah, you're going to wake up like the person we talked about before. Like what? Now I have to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us reflect over each quality we discussed today. Right? Because these are qualities that are, like I said, we covered evaluating yourself. In many different forms, you can evaluate yourself. Evaluate not just your physical self, right? Your inner self as well. Right? The more important thing is your inner self and your nafs. And how am I going to live my life from here on out? Right? Jazakumullah khairan. Inshallah, we'll open the floor for questions.
Okay. So inshallah, for anybody that doesn't feel comfortable raising their hand, which you can, feel free to do so. You can leave an anonymous question, onlinequestions.org. That's the code right there. Inshallah. Are you cool with the questions? Okay. One person asked, does the word dhuhr come from the word duha?
Does the word dhuhr come from the word duha?
Yeah.
No, it does not. Right? So the root words of dhuhr is dhahara. Right? Dha, ha, ra. In the words duha, right? The root letters of that, Fad, Ha, yeah. So they're not the same.
What would be the best strategy for making tawbah and stopping doing a sin?
Very good question, Mashallah. Right? What will be the strategy? One more time. What will be the strategy?
What would be the best strategy for making tawbah and stopping a sin?
The best strategy is when you come, because the thing is, the only time you're actually going to stop yourself, realize something's wrong inside yourself. Other than that, you're never going to realize. When a person just comes to that moment, like, yo, what am I doing? Right? That reality, like, you know what? Like, how have I been living my life? When you wake up, that's when you're going to be like, you know what? I have to make a change in my life. And you start that change by repenting to Allah. You kind of apologize to Him. Ya Allah, I'm sorry. I slipped up. I made these mistakes. Right? These three conditions that I mentioned before. All right, well, let's see who can remember them. The first one is what? For tawbah. Sorry?
Stop doing the sin.
Stop the sin, right? Now you truly, right? You truly want to make a change now. Now your life has been going left, you want to go right. Right? So, number one is what? Now you stop the sin. What's the second one?
Feel
Feeling remorse. You feel bad. And like, I did this knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was watching me the whole time. And the third one is what? Yes, making a firm intention to never go back to that sin ever again. So those are the steps that you have to take. Right? And again, but the most important thing out of all these is self-realization. Right? It's kind of waking up and man, what have I been doing all this time? Right? Disobeying Allah, carrying out these sins. Right? So this is going to wake you up, inshallah. No other questions? Okay. Any other questions on the floor? Yeah, I want to ask.
What are ways you can give up your sinful habits? Ways to control your habits?
Very good, inshallah. Right? So, some of the ways we can give up sinful habits, right, is I said before, you're not going to be able to stop a sin right away. Right? You're not going to be able to stop a sin right away. So, you got to take steps towards them. You know what? If you have whatever haram you may be committing, right? Whatever you may be doing, right? There has to be a point where, like, you know what? I'm doing this thing too much. I'm addicted to committing sins. And again, it kind of goes back to the previous question. You know what, man? I got to wake up, right? And I got to smell the coffee. What am I doing? So, like, you stop that sin slowly. So, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees that effort from you, Ya Allah, I'm trying, right? I'm trying, Ya Allah. You ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq. Ya Allah, please give me tawfiq to step away from sin. You know, majority of the times what happens is we're not going to stop a sin or not going to stop up until we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to get us away from this. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, please get me away from this sin. I don't want to do it anymore. Right? I want to step away from it. Ask Allah for tawfiq. And keep asking Allah. Right? Don't just be like, Ya Allah, I need to stop the sin. And that's it. That's not going to work. You need to keep asking. You need to be persistent. Right? You know how we find persistence annoying? Right? In this life? Like, you know, somebody keeps asking a question. Well, you know, come on, man, come on, tell me. Like, I want to know the tea. Please tell me. Like, no, stop. Right? But when it comes to persistence with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the beauty of Allah. Allah already knows what you're going to ask. Think about it like this, right? Allah already knows what you're going to ask, yet He still listens. Right? If you go and ask your dad, can I borrow your car? Right? Or, you know, your dad, you've asked him a certain amount of times to where he already knows what you're coming to ask. This happened to me before, right? It's like, I already know what you're going to ask. The answer is no. Right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's the beauty of Allah. He already knows what you're going to ask. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala listens. And Allah loves when the servant asks from Him. Allah loves that. Right? So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And one of the more beautiful things they asked the question was like, you know, what steps do we take to put like a foot in our nafs? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gives a very beautiful hadith, right? It says, أَكْثِرُوا ذِكْرَ هَادِمِ اللَّذَّاتِ Abundantly do dhikr of that thing which cuts off your desires. What is that thing? Who can answer? What thing can we remember that cuts off our desires? Man, it just leaves a weird feeling when we talk about it. Sorry?
Fasting.
Fasting is one of them. Yeah, if you're committing sins or something like that, fasting is a good way to get rid of it. Yes. Amen. Yes. And that way He had notes. It is death. The moment somebody talks about death, I'm like, man, you just You're a buzzkill. Get out of here. Like, that's the first thing that we do. If somebody asks us or talk to us about death, right? We don't want to, we don't want to answer, right? We really do not want to answer about that, all right? I'm going to mention, is there any more questions?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to keep that short. But yeah, so always remember death, inshallah, in your eye. All right, so that's what.
What does the nafs actually refer to?
Oh, that's a very good question. That's a very deep question, actually. But I'll give a very simple answer. The nafs, right? I'll give you an example of Ramadan. Okay? In Ramadan, right? We hear the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where Rasulullah ﷺ mentions, right? What happens to the shayateen? وَسُلْسِلَةِ الشَّيَاطِينَ. The shayateen have now been chained up. Right? Now, how are we still able to commit sins in the month of Ramadan? That's the question we ask ourselves. That shaitan has such an impact on your nafs, yani on your carnal desires, right? Shaitan kind of amps up. Like remember I said the nafs and shaitan work together. Shaitan amps up your nafs. They're like, you can do this, do that. So that's what it refers to. It's your carnal desires, right? And to kind of put a foot on that, right? That's the biggest part. That's a really really tough part of it. So you can translate the nafs as your carnal desires, right? Now there's different types of nafs too. Nafs al-mutma'inna, nafs al-lawama, nafs al-amara. But that's another topic, inshallah, we'll cover as we go along.
One of the signs of the movement is a soul that regrets its actions. Then who is this feeling? What should we do?
Rasulullah Sallallahu mentions that it's actually a very beautiful story that regarding this hadith. One time, Imam Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala's teacher, right? This is the teacher of Imam Bukhari. Before he became the teacher of Imam Bukhari, he was someone who used to love to drink. He would get drunk all the time. All the time. He loved to drink, loved to have a good time, whatever the case was, right? And one time this famous muhaddith, famous scholar of hadith came into town, and he saw the people gathering around, asking him questions. So he was like drunk, right, out of his mind. And he's like, you think you're some muhaddith, right? Tell me a hadith. And he analyzed the situation, and he said, look, إِذَا فَاتَكَ الْحَيَاء فَافْعَلْ مَا شِئْتَ. When haya, modesty leaves you, then do whatever you want. Yani, if you get to that point where you're not even feeling bad for committing a sin, because this is what differentiates us between animals. If you study like logic and mantiq, they've given us titles. We have hayawan or natiq, which is an animal, like we're animals, but we are able to express how we feel. And then you have just plain old hayawan, animals. So what's the difference between an animal and us? It's the haya factor. It's the haya is that barrier that keeps you from doing certain actions. You see, if someone doesn't have like much modesty, they'll say whatever they want. They'll do haram in public. They'll do all these different kinds of things. That's because the haya is not there. So really think about this hadith that, look, has Allah just let me be? Like, Allah's I'm not even worried about this person anymore. That's it. So when you get to that point where you're not even feeling bad for committing a sin, just remember this hadith that, look, do I have any modesty left in myself? That will get you back on track, inshallah.
I kind of missed this already, but it's even if I pray and make dua, I still have strong desires to do certain sins.
Yes. Again, the desires are not going to go away. It's like we're inside, right? We're inside. We're created weak. Right? We're created with these desires of our nafs, right? So how, like, even if we pray salah, even if we fast, whatever the case is, right? Our nafs is still going to feel. It's still going to have desires. But it's up to you to control those desires. Right? If you're going to let your nafs go ahead and take it, right, you're just going to move further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're going to go according to the plan of shaitan. Right? But even if you have that desire, we all have desires, right? But what kind of keeps us in check is that, you know what? I want to follow the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? If you really care about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the way that Allah cares about us, right? We'll think about these things before we do something. Don't just do something and oh man, I regret it. Right? Even if this is gonna happen sometimes. Like I said, we're human beings, we're insan. We're gonna make mistakes. The word insan comes from nasiya, right? Which means to forget. You're gonna make mistakes. And Rasulullah says, "Kullu bani Adam khata'un." Every single son of Adam is gonna make a mistake. Khata'un. You're gonna make mistakes in life. وَخَيْرُ الْخَطَائِينَ التَّوَّابُونَ. But the best of those people who make mistakes are those who turn to Allah. Remember, what is the definition of tawbah? We say it's repentance, right? That's a pretty obvious answer. The definition of tawbah is to return. to return back. The word taba yatubu means to return, it's like turn around and go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We good? Any other questions or we're good? جزاكم الله خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب.
All right. Jazakallah khair, everybody coming. Inshallah.